The chamber stretched so far that the walls disappeared into darkness. 17,000 species had sent representatives to this place, and every single one of them was staring at the human who stood alone on the platform. Below. Ambassador Marcus Vale felt the weight of those stares. He kept his hands steady at his sides, his posture straight, his face calm. Behind him, projected onto a screen larger than most moons, Earth rotated slowly. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, home. The planet that had given birth to humanity looked impossibly small in this vast chamber. The High Arbiter spoke. It was a being of pure crystalline light, older than most stars. When it talked, the words appeared directly in the minds of everyone present. Humanity of Earth, you stand accused of crimes against the galactic order. Marcus had prepared for this moment. He had rehearsed 100 different speeches, considered 1,000 different arguments. But now, facing the assembled power of an entire galaxy, he simply asked, "What crime?" The chamber erupted with noise. Clicks, whistles, roars, and sounds that human ears could not properly hear. The translation systems struggled to keep up. Through it all, Marcus stood perfectly still. The Arbiter raised one crystalline appendage, and silence fell like a hammer. "You discovered the location of the dormant fleet." Those 5 words carried more weight than any weapon. Around the chamber, beings that had lived for hundreds of thousands of years shifted nervously. The dormant fleet was legend. It was danger. It was something that should have remained hidden forever. "We found what you had forgotten existed," Marcus replied calmly. "We decoded maps that your ancestors left behind. Maps that were supposed to be impossible to read. And when we found the fleet, we did not touch it. We reported it to this council immediately. You should never have found it at all." The shout came from Delegate Vorin, a massive insectoid being whose species had ruled star systems for 40,000 years. No young species has ever possessed the mathematical ability to decode precursor navigation systems. You are barely civilized. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. And yet we did decode them. In less than 50 years of study. That is the problem. Vorin's mandibles clicked furiously. Your species learns too fast. You consume knowledge like a disease spreading through the galaxy. 200 years ago, you could barely leave your own planet. Now you have colonies on 87 worlds. You have mastered technologies that took my people 20,000 years to understand. You are dangerous. "We have started no wars," Marcus said quietly. "You ended 3. Vorin's voice rose higher. The Vendorian cluster maintained perfect balance for 1,000 years. Then your merchants arrived with your concepts of free markets and competitive innovation. Within a decade, the entire social structure collapsed into a system where the lower classes could own property," Marcus countered, "where children were not born owing debts to their parents' masters. If that is a crime, then yes, we are guilty." The Arbiter's light pulsed with something that might have been frustration. "The issue is not what you changed, Ambassador. The issue is that you change everything you touch. Humanity does not adapt to the galaxy. You force the galaxy to adapt to you. This cannot be permitted." Marcus looked around the chamber. He saw beings of light and shadow, creatures made of metal and stone, entities that existed partially outside normal space. The accumulated wisdom of millions of years, all focused on judging his species. "You are afraid of us," he said simply. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Delegates shouted denials in 100 languages. Some demanded Marcus be removed from the chamber. Others called for immediate punishment. The noise grew so loud that the translation systems simply gave up and broadcast. Only static dot. It took several minutes for the Arbiter to restore order. When silence finally returned, its crystalline form had dimmed slightly. "The Council has deliberated for 19 standard cycles. We have reviewed every aspect of human history since your species joined galactic civilization. We have consulted the oldest minds and the wisest scholars. The verdict is unanimous. Marcus closed his eyes. He knew what was coming, but hearing it would still hurt. Humanity is hereby banished from galactic civilization. All human colonies beyond your home system will be evacuated. Your species will be confined to the Sol system. All relay gates leading to your territory will be permanently sealed. Any human vessel found beyond the boundary will be destroyed without warning. The words fell like stones into deep water. Marcus opened his eyes. For how long? Indefinitely, the Arbiter replied. Perhaps forever. You are too dangerous to walk among us, humans. Too unpredictable. Too hungry for change. You are making a mistake, Marcus said. His voice was quiet, but it carried clearly through the vast space. Not because we will fight you. We will not. Not because we will resist. We cannot. But because you need us more than you know. Delegate Vorn made a sound that the translator rendered as contemptuous laughter. We existed for millions of years before your species invented fire. We will exist for millions more after you are confined to your single star system. Marcus looked directly at the massive insectoid being. For a moment, human eyes met the compound gaze of a creature whose civilization was older than human language. I hope you are right, Marcus said softly. I truly do. He turned and walked from the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the silence that followed. No one spoke as the human ambassador crossed the enormous floor, growing smaller and smaller until he reached the exit. The doors closed behind him with a sound like the sealing of a tomb. The evacuation began 3 days later. Across 87 worlds, humans packed their belongings and boarded transport ships. On the agricultural colony of Harvest Prime, a young pilot named Tara Okonjo made the final flight, bringing the last settlers home while alien enforcement vessels watched from orbit. Fleet Admiral Ria Torres stood on the bridge of her flagship and argued with Marcus over secure communication. We should fight, she said. We have ships. We have weapons. We can make them regret this decision. And then what? Marcus asked tiredly. We win a battle and lose the war? They will destroy us, Ria. Every last human. Is pride worth extinction? Torres was silent for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. No, it is not. The relay gates closed one by one. Massive structures that connected the galaxy, allowing travel between distant stars in mere hours, sealed themselves permanently. The last gate to close was the one nearest to Earth. Marcus stood at an observation window and watched it happen. The structure folded in on itself, becoming smooth and featureless, impenetrable. On his tablet, a message appeared from Dr. Emil Vance, an elderly scientist who had spent decades studying alien ecosystems. We need to talk. I have found something terrible in the data from the outer colonies. Species are dying. Systems are failing. No one is listening. Marcus read the message twice. Then he looked out at the sealed gate, feeling the weight of isolation settling over humanity like a blanket. They were alone now, cut off from the galaxy, trapped in their home system with nowhere to go. But humans had been trapped before. They had faced impossible situations throughout their history, and they had always found a way forward. Send me everything you have, Marcus typed back. If the galaxy will not listen, we will prepare anyway. The ship carrying the last humans home turned toward the distant sun. Behind them, the galaxy continued without them. 17,000 species returned to their comfortable patterns, secure in the knowledge that the disruptive element had been contained. They had no idea what they had just done, and they would not realize their mistake for more than a century. 112 years had passed since the gates closed. Director Kenji Mwamba stood at the observation window of Titan Station and watched Saturn's rings catch the distant sunlight. He was born 20 years after the banishment, had grown up hearing stories about the galaxy beyond the barrier, but had never seen it himself. Behind him, the neural link facility hummed with activity. Humanity had not broken during their isolation. They had adapted, innovated, and grown. The Sol system was now home to 43 billion people, spread across stations and colonies from Mercury to the Kuiper Belt. They had learned to thrive in their prison, but they had never stopped wondering what lay beyond. Director, you need to see this immediately. The voice belonged to Dr. Freya Okonjo, Chief of Deep Space Monitoring. She was the granddaughter of Terra, the pilot who had made the final evacuation flight from Harvest Prime over a century ago. Kenji had known Freya for years and had never heard that tone of fear in her voice before. He followed her to the monitoring station. A dozen technicians were gathered around displays, their faces pale. "What is it?" Kenji asked. "The sealed gates," Freya said. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted the controls. "They have been completely silent for 112 years. No signals, no energy signatures, nothing. They were designed to be inert, dead. And now? Now they are screaming." She pressed a button, and sound filled the room. It was noise at first, chaotic and overlapping, but then the translation software kicked in and resolved it into words. Thousands of voices, speaking in hundreds of languages, all saying the same thing. "Help us. Help us. Help us. Help us." The room went silent except for that desperate chorus. Kenji felt ice form in his stomach. "How long has this been broadcasting?" 17 hours, Freya replied. "Every sealed gate simultaneously. The power requirements alone should be impossible. Whatever is happening out there, it is big enough to override systems that were designed to last forever." Kenji studied the waveforms on the displays. The signals were not random. They carried data, coordinates, images. "Can you isolate individual transmissions?" Freya nodded and worked her controls. The cacophony resolved into a single voice. It was speaking the Keth language. "This is Outpost 77 requesting immediate assistance. The drift has reached our system. Evacuation is impossible. We have 12 hours before complete collapse. If anyone can hear this, please help, please." The transmission ended with a burst of static. "The drift," Kenji repeated. "Do we have any data on that?" A younger technician spoke up. "I have been monitoring leaked transmissions for years, sir. About 30 years ago, Outer Rim colonies started going silent. The elder races called it the drift. They thought it was just natural population decline or technical failures. But it has been spreading. Entire sectors are going dark. Show me." The main display changed to show a map of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas that had stopped communicating. 30 years ago, there had been a handful of red spots near the rim. Now, the red covered nearly a quarter of the galaxy and was spreading inward like a disease. "What causes it?" Kenji asked. "Unknown, sir. But we have intercepted reports of ships disappearing, worlds going silent, and automated systems failing. The elder races have been trying to stop it, but nothing works. And now," Freya pulled up new data. "Now it is accelerating. In the past month alone, over 200 systems have gone dark." Kenji stared at the map. The red zone was advancing toward the galactic core, where the oldest civilizations made their homes. Where Earth would be if the banishment ever ended. What else are the transmissions saying? Freya cycled through several channels. Each one was the same. Desperate calls for help, reports of failing systems, and pleas for someone, anyone, to respond. One transmission showed footage of massive black ships consuming everything in their path. Another showed entire planets going dark as their infrastructure simply stopped working. The dormant fleet, a voice said from behind them. Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway was an elderly human with skin like weathered leather and eyes that had seen too much. Dr. Emil Vance, now 138 years old, walked slowly into the room. I warned Marcus over a century ago. I saw the signs. Systems older than Earth were starting to fail. No one listened. You think this is related to the fleet we discovered? Kenji asked. I think someone woke it up, Emil replied. And I think the galaxy finally realized they made a terrible mistake when they banished us. As if to confirm his words, a new transmission came through. This one was different. It was not a general distress call, but a directed message sent specifically to the Sol system. The voice that spoke was ancient and carried the harmonic overtones of a luminari, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Humanity of Earth, I am Administrator Kel. I have lived for 800,000 of your years. I voted against your banishment and was overruled. I am contacting you now in violation of council law because we are dying and you are our only hope. The transmission showed images of worlds in chaos. The luminary homeworld, which had existed in peaceful transcendence for nearly 1,000,000 years, was in the path of the approaching darkness. Ships by the thousands were fleeing, but there was nowhere safe to go. The dormant fleet has awakened. Kel's voice continued. It is destroying everything it encounters, and we cannot stop it. We have tried every weapon, every technology, every strategy developed over millions of years. Nothing works. The fleet was built by beings older and wiser than any living species. Only one race in this galaxy has ever demonstrated the ability to understand precursor technology at a fundamental level. There was a pause. When Kel spoke again, the ancient being's voice was quiet. We were wrong about you. We were afraid of your potential, your hunger for knowledge, your refusal to accept limits. We thought we were protecting the galaxy from chaos. Instead, we removed the only species that could have prevented this catastrophe. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I am begging you, help us. Please. The transmission ended. The room was completely silent. Kenji looked around at his team. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. Outside the window, Saturn continued its eternal rotation, beautiful and indifferent. The Sol system had been humanity's entire universe for over a century. It was safe here, comfortable. They had built a civilization that worked, that thrived, that needed nothing from the galaxy that had exiled them. Call an emergency council meeting, Kenji said finally. Contact every colony, every station, every settlement. We need to decide what we do next. Do we have a choice? Freya asked quietly. They sealed us in here. We cannot break through the gates. Not from the inside, Kanji agreed. But if Kel is serious about asking for help, then someone on the outside has to be willing to break those seals. He looked at the map showing the spreading red zone. We have to try. Because if that reaches the core systems, and we did nothing, we will never forgive ourselves. A younger council member, someone who had been born after the banishment, spoke up with heat in his voice. Why should we help them? They condemned us. They exiled us. Let them face the consequences of their decision. Kenji understood the anger. He felt it himself. But he also remembered something his grandmother had told him, words passed down from Marcus Vale himself. Being better than your enemies does not mean being perfect. It means being better. The council meeting was set for the next day. Across the Sol system, billions of humans watched the intercepted transmissions and debated what to do. Some argued for revenge through inaction. Others pointed out that innocent beings were dying, including species that had opposed the banishment. The arguments raged through the night. In the morning, humanity made its choice. The vote was not unanimous, but it was clear. They would help if they could dot now. They just needed to figure out how to break through a barrier that was designed to last forever, reach a galaxy that feared them, and stop a threat that had destroyed civilizations millions of years old. Dot it was, several people pointed out. Exactly the kind of impossible problem that humanity specialized in solving. Director Kenji Mwamba stood once more at the observation window, watching the stars. They were the same stars humans had watched for thousands of years, first from Earth, then from across the solar system. Soon, if everything worked, they might walk among those stars again, or they might fail, and the galaxy would die while humanity watched safely from behind their walls. Either way, the universe was about to learn something important about the species that refused to accept impossible situations. They were about to learn what humanity did when the galaxy needed them most. The council chamber in Geneva had not been built with alien visitors in mind. The ceilings were too low, the chairs were wrong, and the lighting was too bright. But the elderly Keth, who stood before humanity's assembled leaders, did not seem to care about his discomfort. His name was Brylax, and he had been hiding in humanity's asteroid belt for 94 years. Director Kenji Mwamba leaned forward in his seat. You have been living in our system since shortly after the banishment was sealed. Why? Brylax's mandibles clicked softly. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that had nothing to do with authority and everything to do with regret. Because I watched. Because I documented your exile. Because I saw your faces when we drove you away from the galaxy. His compound eyes, dimmed by age, swept across the room. I have studied 12,000 species in my career. I thought I understood the patterns of civilization. I was wrong. Wrong how? Asked a representative from the Mars colonies. Every species in the galaxy reaches a peak and then stops, Rylax explained. They find equilibrium. They perfect their society, their technology, their culture, and then they maintain that perfection forever. The Luminari transcended physical form 800,000 years ago. Since then, they have not changed at all. My own people, the Keth, perfected our civilization 40,000 years ago. We have produced no new innovations since. He paused, his aging body struggling with the effort of standing. But humanity does not stop. You were imprisoned in a single star system for over a century, and you still innovated. You still grew. You still changed. That is what the galaxy needs now. The dormant fleet, Dr. Freya said. Yes. Brylax's voice grew quieter. When you discovered its location and reported it to the council, I knew something fundamental had shifted. No young species should have been able to decode those maps. It took my people 60,000 years to achieve what you did in 50. The Luminari needed 300,000 years. You did it because you approach problems differently. You refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. Kenji stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. Administrator Kell has been sending us transmissions. The fleet is destroying everything in its path, but the gates are still sealed. Even if we want to help, we are trapped here. Not entirely, Rylax said. I have something that was smuggled into your system decades ago. A quantum entanglement link connected directly to Administrator Kell. With it, you can communicate in real time with someone who has the authority to open the gates. Will the council agree to that? Freya asked. Opening the gates means admitting they were wrong about us. Many would rather die than admit that, Rylax said bluntly. But Kell is working to change minds. And you have something that will help convince them. What? A plan. A real workable strategy to stop the fleet. Show them that, and even the most stubborn delegates will have to reconsider. The problem was that humanity did not have a plan yet. The dormant fleet was built by precursors, beings millions of years more advanced than any current civilization. It had weapons that could destroy planets. defenses that had shrugged off every attack, and a coordination system that linked millions of ships across. Light-years. Dr. Freya and her team had spent the past 72 hours analyzing every piece of data they could extract from the intercepted transmissions. The picture that emerged was terrifying. The fleet was not just powerful, it was smart. It adapted to every tactic used against it, learned from every encounter, and grew more efficient with each battle. It is impossible to fight conventionally, Freya told the assembled military leadership. The elder races have tried that. They lose every time. Fleet Admiral Ria Torres, now 140 years old thanks to life extension technology, studied the tactical displays. Then we do not fight conventionally. We do what humans do best, which is, we cheat. Torres smiled grimly. We spent a century studying those sealed gates. We know they use quantum field manipulation to create stable wormholes. The precursors who built them were brilliant, but they made one assumption, that anyone trying to breach the gates would do it from outside the barrier. They never considered someone might try from inside. She pulled up a schematic on the main display. We can create a temporary breach. It will only work once, and it will only stay open for 47 hours. But that gives us a window. A window to do what? Kenji asked. To prove ourselves, Torres replied. We send a fleet through. We engage the dormant fleet. We show the galaxy that we can do what they cannot. And we do it fast enough that the Council has to vote to keep the gates open permanently before a window closes. And if we fail, then the gates reseal and we are back where we started. Except this time, we will have violated the banishment. Every species in the galaxy will be hunting us as criminals. Torres met Kenji's eyes. But we will have tried. That has to count for something. The debate lasted 3 days. The risks were enormous. The chance of success was small. But humanity had never been good at accepting defeat without trying. The vote passed. Humanity would attempt the breach. Using the quantum link that Brylax had provided, Kenji contacted Administrator Kel. The ancient luminari appeared as a form of shifting light on the display. Director Mwamba, I have been waiting for your response. We have a plan, Kenji said, but it requires trust on both sides. We will breach the gates from our side. Can you convince enough council members to keep them open once we prove ourselves? There was a long pause. I will try, Kel said finally. But many still fear you. They would rather face the fleet than admit they were wrong about humanity. Then make it not about us, Kenji replied. Make it about survival. Make it about saving billions of lives. Make it about doing what is right. And if they refuse, then we will have 47 hours to change their minds. The breach technology was activated 7 days later. Every scientific resource in the Sol system had been dedicated to making it work. The mathematics alone required processing power that had taken decades to develop. The energy requirements were staggering. But when the countdown reached 0 and the breach opened, it worked perfectly. The sealed gate tore open like fabric being ripped apart. Beyond it, for the first time in over a century, humans could see the Galaxy Fleet. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of the ESS Prometheus, humanity's finest warship. Around her were 46 other vessels, carrying the best crews that Earth and its colonies could provide. All ships report ready, Admiral, her tactical officer announced. Torres took a deep breath. She had been a young officer during the evacuation. She remembered the shame of retreating, the anger of being judged and found wanting. Now, finally, she had a chance to show the galaxy what humanity truly was. Take us through, she ordered. The fleet surged forward. One by one, the ships passed through the breach and emerged into a galaxy at war. The scene that greeted them was chaos. Ships from a dozen species were fighting a desperate battle against a wall of black metal that stretched across space. The dormant fleet, vast beyond comprehension, was methodically destroying everything in its path. "My God," someone whispered on the bridge. Torres allowed herself 5 seconds to feel the fear. Then she pushed it aside and focused on the tactical display. Communications. Open a channel to all allied forces. The main screen split into multiple windows. Alien commanders stared at the human fleet with expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed contempt. Human vessels. A Keth warlord spoke first. "You have violated the banishment. Leave immediately, or we will destroy you ourselves." "You are welcome to try," Torres replied calmly. "After you finish dealing with the fleet that is currently killing your people. We came to help, not to argue about politics." "Help?" The warlord's mandibles clicked with what might have been laughter. "You have no experience with warfare on this scale. You have been isolated for over a century. What could you possibly offer?" Torres smiled. "Ideas. Humanity has spent 112 years with nothing to do but think. We have had a lot of good ideas. Would you like to hear some of them?" She did not wait for an answer. Tactical. Execute Pattern 11. The Prometheus surged forward, directly toward the densest concentration of dormant vessels. Every allied ship immediately began broadcasting warnings. The alien commanders watched in horror as the human flagship dove into what should have been certain death. Then something impossible happened. The Prometheus detonated a quantum resonance pulse, a technology that humanity had developed in secret, and 10,000 enemy ships went dark simultaneously. The human vessel emerged from a fold in space. Completely undamaged, 3 light seconds away, Torres looked at the stunned alien commanders on her screen. "Now, would you like to hear the rest of our plan?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Humanity had returned to the galaxy, and the galaxy was about to learn why they should never have been sent away. The dormant fleet stretched across 3 light years, a wall of ancient metal and automated destruction. 12 trillion tons of precursor technology, built when the universe was young, now awakened and methodically consuming everything in its path. Against it stood 47 human ships and the combined forces of species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. Fleet Admiral Ria Torres watched the tactical display update in real time. The quantum resonance pulse had disabled 10,000 enemy vessels, but that was barely 1% of the total fleet. The rest continued their advance, adapting their defenses even as she watched. "We bought ourselves 30 minutes, her tactical officer reported. "After that, they will have compensated for the resonance frequency." "Then we use those 30 minutes well," Torres replied. She opened a channel to all allied commanders. "This is Admiral Torres of Earth. Here is what we know about the dormant fleet. It is controlled by a central command, intelligence located somewhere in the primary formation. If we can reach that vessel and upload a shutdown code, we can stop the entire fleet simultaneously." A Keth warlord appeared on the screen. His name was Drexel, and his skepticism was obvious. "We have known this for months, human. The problem is reaching the command vessel. It is protected by layers of defense that have destroyed every ship we sent. We lost 3 entire battle groups trying." "Because you attacked directly," Torres said. "The fleet expects that. It is designed to counter conventional military tactics. But humans spent over a century learning to think unconventionally." She pulled up a new tactical projection. "This is not a military assault. This is a heist." The plan was audacious to the point of insanity. The human fleet would not attack the command vessel directly. Instead, they would coordinate with every allied species, using each civilization's unique capabilities in a sequence that the fleet could not predict. The Luminari, who existed partially outside normal space, would scout the command vessel's defenses without being detected. The Vendorians, whose economy had been rebuilt around human competitive principles, would provide the logistics network to coordinate thousands of ships across light years. The Keth would provide warriors for the boarding action, and humanity would provide the central element, adaptability. "This will never work," Drexel said flatly. "Probably not," Torres agreed. "But it has a better chance than anything you have tried. And we have 46 hours left before our gate closes. So we can either argue about the plan, or we can execute it and argue about whether it worked afterward." Drexel's mandibles clicked slowly. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. "I have spent my entire life hating your species. You disrupted our perfect civilization. Yo? You changed things that had worked for 40,000 years. But right now, I am very glad you exist." He straightened. "The Keth Dominion will follow your lead, Admiral Torres. Tell us what you need." The battle began in earnest. The human fleet split into smaller units, each one targeting a specific subsystem of the dormant fleet's coordination network. They did not try to destroy the enemy ships, which would have been impossible. Instead, they confused them, disrupted their communication, and created chaos in what had been a perfectly coordinated swarm. Dr. Freya Okonjo watched from the Prometheus' science station. She had volunteered to accompany the fleet as a scientific advisor, and now she was racing to decode the final layers of precursor encryption. Every few minutes, new data arrived from the Luminary Scouts, and she had to integrate it into her understanding of the command structure. "The shutdown code is incomplete," she reported to Torres. "I need access to the command vessel's primary systems before I can finish it." "Then we get you that access," Torres replied. She turned to her tactical officer. "Launch the boarding teams." What followed was the most complex military operation in human history. Keth warriors, encased in powered armor that could survive in hard vacuum, launched from their carriers. Human marines accompanied them, smaller and more fragile, but carrying experimental weapons that had been developed during the long isolation. Together, they fought their way through layers of automated defenses, while the main fleet kept the enemy. Distracted. Drexel led the Keth forces personally. He had fought in 100 wars across a career spanning 6,000 years, but he had never seen anything like the humans he fought beside. They were physically weak compared to his people. Their armor was less advanced, and their weapons were improvised. But they refused to stop. When one tactic failed, they tried another. When a position was overrun, they fell back and counterattacked from a different angle. They were chaos incarnate, and the automated defenses of the fleet could not adapt fast enough. "They are insane," Drexel muttered over the command channel. A human marine nearby, a young woman named Lieutenant Hayes, grinned at him. "Thank you, sir. We try." The boarding party reached the outer hull of the command vessel. It was massive beyond reason, a construct that dwarfed most moons. Cutting through the hull should have taken days. The humans did it in 17 minutes, using a shaped quantum drill that should not have been possible to create. Inside, they found corridors that had not been walked in 2 billion years. The air was stale but breathable. The lights flickered on as they advanced, responding to motion sensors that still functioned after an eternity of waiting. Everything was too large, built for beings that stood 3 times the height of a human. "This is wrong," Drexel said quietly. "The fleet is automated. There should be no provisions for organic life." "Unless it was not always automated," Lieutenant Hayes replied. She pointed to markings on the walls. "Those are not instructions for machines. Those are written language. Someone lived here." They pressed deeper into the vessel. Behind them, the battle continued to rage. The Prometheus and its fleet were taking damage now. The dormant fleet was adapting, as Torres had known it would. They were running out of time. Finally, they reached the central chamber. It was enormous, and at its heart stood a crystalline structure that pulsed with power. Dr. Freya, connected remotely through the boarding team's equipment, gasped. "That is not just a computer core. That is a stasis pod." Before anyone could respond, the pod activated. The crystal cleared, revealing a figure inside. It was humanoid in basic shape, but clearly alien, with features that suggested immense age. As they watched, the being's eyes opened. "You came," it said in a language that the universal translators struggled to process. "I have been waiting so long. I almost gave up hope." Admiral Torres, watching from the Prometheus, leaned forward. "Who are you?" "I am." The being paused, as if remembering something from the distant past. "I was called Keeper. I am the last of the precursors. And I am the one who activated the dormant fleet." The revelation sent shockwaves through every allied commander. The enemy was not a malfunction. It was a choice. Why? Torres demanded. Why destroy the galaxy? The Keeper stepped from its pod, moving slowly after 2 billion years of sleep, because the galaxy was dying. Not from war or disease, but from stagnation. Every species reaches a peak and then stops growing. They perfect themselves and then remain unchanged for millions of years. The Luminari, the Keth, the Vendorians, all of them. Perfect, static, dead in all but name. So you decided to kill them? Drexel's voice was filled with rage. "I decided to force a choice," the Keeper replied. Either the elder races would adapt, overcome, and grow again, or they would fall and make room for something new. Its ancient eyes focused on Torres. "When your species discovered the fleet and did not try to claim it, I knew the time had come. You are what I've been waiting for. You are the species that refuses to stop growing." Torres felt the weight of 2 billion years of intention pressing down on her. "You used us. You woke the fleet to test us." "I woke the fleet to save the future," the Keeper corrected. "Your species is the galaxy's next evolution. The elder races have had their time. Now they must either change or move aside." "That is genocide," Torres said quietly. "That is selection." The Keeper moved to a control panel. "But I am willing to offer a compromise. Help me, and I will give you the galaxy. Stop me, and the fleet will continue until only humanity remains." In the silence that followed, Torres looked at her crew. At Dr. Freya, brilliant and determined. At Lieutenant Hayes, brave and adaptable. At all the humans who had come through that breach to help people who had exiled them. Then she looked at Drexel and the other alien representatives on her screen. At beings who had lived for thousands of years, who represented civilizations millions of years old, now facing extinction. "No," Torres said firmly. "We are not going to save the galaxy your way. We are going to do it our way." "And what way is that?" the Keeper asked. Torres smiled. "Dr. Freya, how long to reprogram the fleet?" There was a pause. Then Freya's voice, filled with excitement and terror. "I can turn it into a construction fleet instead of a destruction fleet. Building instead of destroying. But it would take decades to complete. But it can be done?" "Yes." Torres looked at the Keeper. "That is the human way. We do not choose between saving you or destroying you. We find a third option that everyone said was impossible." The ancient being stared at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, it smiled. "You continue to surprise me." "Very well, Admiral. Let us see if you can pull off the impossible one more time." The chamber at the heart of the command vessel was ancient beyond human comprehension. Its walls were covered in symbols that had been old when Earth was still molten rock. Admiral Rhea Torres stood before the Keeper, the last precursor, and made a choice that would define humanity's place in the galaxy forever. "You want us to reprogram the dormant fleet," the keeper said. It was not a question. To transform weapons into tools, destruction into creation. It is a very human solution. It is the only solution that does not require choosing who lives and who dies, Torres replied. Behind her, the boarding team waited in tense silence. Dr. Freya was already working on her tablet, pulling together the pieces of code they would need. But I need to know, will you help us or will you fight us? The keeper was silent for a long moment. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of 2 billion years of waiting. I activated the fleet to force the galaxy to evolve, to shock the elder races out of their comfortable stagnation. I wanted them to adapt or die, to prove they still had the capacity for growth. It looked at Torres with eyes that had seen galaxies form. But perhaps forcing a choice between survival and extinction is itself a form of stagnation. Perhaps true evolution means finding new choices that no one considered possible. So you will help? I will not interfere, the keeper said carefully. The rest is up to you. Torres opened a channel to the Prometheus. Bridge, status report. Her tactical officer's voice came back strained. Admiral, the fleet is pressing the attack. We have lost 11 ships. The Allied forces have lost hundreds. We can hold for another hour, maybe 2, before we are overwhelmed. And our gate? 18 hours until it closes. If you are not back by then, you will be trapped here. Torres looked at Dr. Freya. Can you do this in 18 hours? Freya did not look up from her work. No, it will take at least 40 hours to write the base code, then another 72 to upload it to every vessel in the fleet, then weeks to verify it worked correctly. What you are asking is impossible, Admiral. Good thing we specialize in impossible, then. Torres contacted every ship in the Allied fleet. Her face appeared on thousands of screens, simultaneously, human and alien alike watching. This is Admiral Torres. We have reached the fleet's command vessel and made contact with the intelligence controlling it. We have a plan to stop the fleet permanently, but it requires time we do not have. So I need something from all of you. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I need you to TR. Used humanity. Trust that we will do what we say. Trust that we will not abandon you. Trust that we can solve this. The response was immediate chaos. Some commanders demanded proof. Others refused outright. But then Drexel, a Keth warlord, spoke up. The Keth Dominion trusts humanity. We will hold the line as long as necessary. One by one, other species added their support. Not all of them, but enough. It would have to be enough. The reprogramming began. Dr. Freya worked with a desperation she had never felt before, translating precursor code that was older than human language, adapting it to modern systems, testing each line in simulated environments. Back in the Sol system, every computing resource was dedicated to helping her. Scientists who had spent their careers studying sealed gates now turned their expertise to rewriting the instructions of world-killing machines. The fundamental architecture is actually elegant. Freya explained during a brief rest. The fleet was designed to be adaptable. The precursors built it knowing that the galaxy would change over billions of years. That means we can redirect its purpose without breaking its core functions. How long? Torres asked. If everything works perfectly? 36 hours. If we encounter problems? Freya shrugged. Longer than we have. Outside, the battle raged. Human ships fought alongside vessels from a dozen species, holding back the dormant fleet through sheer determination. Lieutenant Hayes led a team defending the command vessel from automated defenders that were trying to reclaim it. Keth warriors stood shoulder to shoulder with human marines, discovering that the small, fragile creatures could be just as stubborn and fierce as any soldier in the galaxy. Drexel found himself fighting next to Hayes during one brutal engagement. An automated defender had them pinned down, and their weapons were ineffective against its shields. Hayes studied it for approximately 10 seconds, then grinned. "Hey, can your species jump about 3 meters?" "Yes, why?" "Because I have an idea." She pulled out a device that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts. "This is a portable gravity well generator. It does not work for more than 2 seconds, but if you can get on top of that thing right when I activate it, your weight, plus the increased gravity, should crush its shield projector." Drexel stared at her. "That is the worst plan I have ever heard. You have a better one?" He did not. They executed Hayes's insane plan, and somehow it worked. As the defender collapsed under its own suddenly unsupported weight, Drexel laughed for the first time in decades. "You humans are going to get me killed, and I am starting to think it will be worth it." Hours passed. The Owlid fleet was being pushed back. Casualties mounted. The Prometheus itself had taken damage that would have destroyed most ships, but its crew kept it fighting through sheer willpower, and on the command vessel, Dr. Freya typed the last line of code. "It is done," she announced, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. "Admiral, I have the complete reprogramming sequence, but uploading it will take 17 hours, and we have." She checked the chrono, 14 hours before the gate closes. Torres closed her eyes briefly. They were so close. After everything they had sacrificed, everyone who had died, they were going to fail because they ran out of time by 3 hours. And the Keeper spoke. "There is another way." Everyone turned to look at the ancient being. It had been silent throughout the reprogramming, simply observing. Now it moved to the central control panel. "I have been connected to this fleet for 2 billion years. I can accelerate the upload process, but it will require me to merge my consciousness directly with every ship simultaneously." "It will work," a ... double quotes. "But what?" Torres asked. "But I will not survive it. My mind will be distributed across millions of vessels, each one processing a fragment of what I once was. I will cease to exist as an individual." The Keeper looked at Torres with something that might have been peace. "I have been waiting for 2 billion years for a reason to hope. You have given me that. Let me give you this in return." Before Torres could respond, the Keeper placed its hands on the control panel. Light exploded through the chamber as an intelligence older than most stars began the process of distributing itself across an entire fleet. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Throughout the battle space, the dormant fleet stopped attacking. Every ship, from the smallest drone to the massive command vessel, went still. Then slowly, they began to change. Weapons retracted. Manufacturing bays opened. Systems that had been designed to destroy started reconfiguring themselves for construction. On the Prometheus's bridge, the tactical officer stared at his displays in disbelief. "Admiral, the fleet is standing down. All hostile actions have ceased, and I am receiving new telemetry. They are offering to help repair our damaged ships." Torres looked at the screen showing the command vessel. The Keeper was still standing, but its form was fading, becoming translucent. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Thank you," the Keeper's voice replied, already sounding distant, "for showing me that evolution does not require destruction. That change can mean growth instead of replacement. That the future can be built instead of inherited from the ashes of the past." The light faded. The Keeper was gone. In its place, distributed across millions of ships, was a new intelligence. Not alive in the traditional sense, but aware. A ghost of what had been, now serving a new purpose. Torres turned to her crew. "All ships return to the breach point. We are going home. What about the Council?" Someone asked. "What about the banishment?" "Let them make their choice," Torres replied. We made ours. The human fleet, battered but victorious, turned toward the gate. Behind them, the transformed dormant fleet began its new work, moving to repair the worlds it had damaged and help the species it had threatened dot at the breach point. A delegation was waiting. Administrator Kell appeared on the main screen, the ancient luminary's form shimmering with emotion. The Council has voted. The banishment is ended. Humanity is welcomed back to galactic civilization with full rights and honors. Was the vote unanimous? Torres asked. No, Kell admitted, but it was sufficient. Many species still fear what you represent. They fear change. They fear your refusal to accept limits. But they can no longer deny that the galaxy needs you. Torres thought about the Keeper's final words, about the choice between stagnation and growth, about the courage required to embrace change, even when it was uncomfortable. Tell them we do not want to rule them or replace them. We just want to help them remember how to grow. The human fleet passed through the breach. The gate did not close behind them this time. It remained open, a permanent bridge between humanity and the stars. 100 years later, the galaxy was transformed. Human settlements existed on thousands of worlds, working alongside species that had once voted to exile them. The reprogrammed fleet, now called the Builder Fleet, continued its work across the galaxy, creating infrastructure, connecting isolated systems, and serving as a reminder that destruction could become creation. Old Brylax, who had witnessed both the banishment and the return, recorded his final historical entry. His chitin was cracked with age, his movements slow, but his mind remained sharp. I have lived for over 6,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have documented the history of civilizations that existed before your ancestors learned to use tools. And in all that time, I have never seen anything like what humanity has accomplished. He paused, looking out at a station where human children played alongside Keth hatchlings, where Luminary taught classes to students from 40 species, where beings that had once lived in isolated perfection now mixed and mingled and grew. The galaxy is chaotic now, messy, unpredictable. Nothing is stable. Nothing is certain. And it is the most alive I have ever seen it. He closed his final log. Outside his window, a human ship and a Keth vessel were working together to build a new relay gate, expanding the network to reach species that had never been connected before. Behind them, the stars shone with a light that promised endless possibilities. Humanity had been banished because they changed everything they touched. Now the galaxy understood. Change was not the threat. Stagnation was. And as long as humanity walked among the stars, the galaxy would never stop growing again.